Speaking of really rich people that have not fallen from grace but are attempting to revamp their image, this is Paris.
Yes.
Yes.
This is Paris. The Paris Hilton documentary dropped on YouTube, and I watched it first, and I found it very compelling. I was very invested in the celebrity gossip world in my late teens and into college. Right?
You?
Yeah, right. I consumed a tremendous amount of that shit. I remember the first time Kim Kardashian was photographed with Paris Hilton, and it was like in Us Weekly. So like, I don't know, Paris Hilton is a big part of kind of like my teendom, almost. Teendom into early adolescence. But I was always a Paris Hilton hater. I did not like the persona she had on TV, but even though I did have an inkling that it was something she was putting on, I disliked that she did that. And I also was really anti-blondes. Like, and she was very, like, she wore blue contact lenses at the time, and, like, I was very critical of that. But so I'm very versed in the sort of narrative that introduced a Paris Hilton to us, even before The Simple Life, the reality show. She was being written about on Page 6 here in New York.
Yeah, quintessential Page 6 persona.
And I don't know, watching this documentary is the first time I actually really questioned the narratives that were applied to now I'm thinking about it, a literal teenage person. It gave me a weird affection for Paris Hilton, this film. Though
a sympathy?
I wouldn't even say a sympathy, an affection. Like, I found something about her endearing. And then I found it very sad that she's in this, like, teeny tiny crystal palace prison in this very specific niche of capitalism where she's very unhappy.
Yeah, and she makes it very apparent she's unhappy.
She's incredibly unhappy, and yet her thing that she's tethered to is this vague notion that she should make $1 billion. And $1 billion just having various product lines of kind of like vacuous bullshit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, why don't you just take however many hundreds of millions of dollars you can afford and just play roulette for a little bit.
Well, that's the thing is that I'm always a little bit fascinated with how...
Or just get a decent enough financial advisor. I mean, you would think they'd be able... she has to have...
She's fine.
I understand she's just totally wants to pursue $1 billion because it's $1 billion.
She also thinks that when she makes $1 billion, then she can relax.
She'll be happy.
Then she'll be happy, which is like the classic thing anybody tells you.
Oh my God, I just am seriously thinking of the Bare Naked Ladies song, If I Had $1 Million.
Well, it was interesting because her original goal was to make 100 million, and then she made the goal and she wasn't too happy, so her next goal was to make $1 billion.
And she kind of, in that moment when she's describing that, she's like, yeah, because you always got to, like, set a new goal and whatever. And I'm interested in the way that these, like, children of privilege...
Surely her family has $1 billion, no? Like,
it's not about her family having $1 billion. Her brands have made $1 billion. She wants to be evaluated as an individual, as someone who is worth $1 billion.
Surely her father could just give her the money.
Well, that was the other interesting part of the film.
If you had watched the documentary.
No, I did not.
Yeah, if you just fucking stop cutting me off about the shit
Seriously.
you didn't see.
Fair. I am as an interested individual asking questions.
So it's anyway, yes, practically we know as real people as opposed to the facsimile of personhood that wealthy people live. We know that it's entirely possible for her to get her hands on $1 billion if it was just literally hovering $1 billion in one place. But she, thinks that it's not only that what's going to make her happy, it's like carrying on some kind of legacy. But they do emphasize in the film that her father is like, the fourth child in this Hilton family?
It's the who didn't get a lot of money when the grandfather died.
Yeah.
When the real estate baron, whose name is Baron, because everyone's fucking children are named Baron if you make over $1 million. Her sister annoyed the shit out of me.
Her sister, Nikki,
who's married to a Rothschild,
yes,
who's the son of a baron.
Yeah, she was very insufferable, very sanctimonious towards Paris, and not incorrectly, sort of implicitly rolling her eyes at Paris, talking about needing to make $1 billion. And but then it seems Nikki Hilton has become a very traditional person. She thinks Paris should have a family, etc. So she's procreated with the Rothschilds. And
I forgot about Nikki Hilton. Nikki Hilton was a person for a while, wasn't she?
Yeah, well, they were marketed together.
Right. Yeah,
when
I remember
they were
that
young,
now.
and then Nikki kind of coasted around Paris, and then Nikki sort of very abruptly shut that off and just went to do like fucking businessy things.
Oh man, that's
or whatever.
Like Nick and Aaron Cannon dynamics.
Nick Cannon? You mean Nick Carter?
Or Carter. Yeah, whatever.
I like the implied existence of a similar sibling for Nick Cannon. Yeah.
Didn't Paris Hilton date Aaron Carter?
Yes, he beat her.
Yeah, he beat her. Yes, they didn't bring him into this.
No,
but
Aaron Carter is an insane person.
But yeah, they do touch on that Paris has had several boyfriends who've abused her.
Yeah.
And the point that was most interesting to me, I guess this gets into kind of a Mark Fisherian analysis, is the amount of emphasis or the amount to which Paris associates her drive to get $1 billion with her trauma of being in solitary confinement at like a rich person's etiquette school.
Well,
emotional well-being school.
These resource schools or wilderness schools, I actually know.
They're a thing.
Yes, I know someone who was sent to those, and they are very traumatic. It's really awful, and they were very popular in the 90s.
Are we talking about boot camp shit?
Yes.
They're like rich people concentration camps.
It's not just rich people.
It's
obviously not impoverished people who can't afford it at all, but it's definitely not. It's definitely kind of there's a religious-y element to it, and that's the aspect of wealthy family being conservative that makes them like fucking dipshits. Like they would send their daughter who would be considered an heiress to this kind of place. I know someone who went to that literal school.
Like this is like the 90s daytime soap, My Problem Kid, we're gonna send them to boot camp shit.
So these schools there are several of these schools. They are often not run by like licensed, healthcare professionals.
Oh yeah, no, they never are.
So the one in particular, Provo Canyon,
Ooh, that sounds Mormon.
Yeah, it's definitely got some underpinnings, I guess, but they are very into hardcore, like they kidnap the kids from their beds and etc. And for someone who's lived an especially privileged life, this kind of trauma, it's going to affect anybody who experiences it, but she
has experienced no other hardship, so
she sort of puts a disproportionate amount of, maybe not disproportionate, I don't want to say that, but everything goes back to it now because she never really talked about it before. It kind of just came up when she was making the film.
I mean, 100% from what I've read and heard about them, it should be considered a crime against humanity.
But it does seem to...
I know a girl who was sent to one of those essentially for getting caught smoking pot, and it definitely sent her down a similar kind of wild path when she returned. And
from what I've read, those are legitimately traumatic things that should be ended forcibly.
And it definitely encapsulates, or it showcases this kind of Deleuzian schizophrenia of capitalism, where she becomes these two characters almost, or at least she sees herself as herself separate from the character she puts on a screen, which then fuels this brand, which is another, I guess, character or spirit of Paris Hilton.
Spectres of Paris.
Spectres of Paris. That's the name of this episode. Paris Hilton, like she creates these characters, or she's very alienated from a self that's stable. And that is apparent throughout. And that seems to be something she traces back to her days in solitary confinement and the trauma she suffered there.
Well, and then I just kept thinking, is there no alternative, Paris? Can you not, there was an interesting moment where her old classmates from this school, she meets them now, and there's sort of a support group of people who went through these kind of schools. And they describe her as being smart. Oh, they always knew what she did on TV was an act. But the one girl specifically says that Paris explained an economic theory really well.
Yeah,
and
that seemed really hammy.
Yeah, and I was just like, what? I wanted to know more about exactly the quality of education that was being had at this place, and etc. But it made me think of how for these children of privilege, there isn't really a place for them to radicalize. I don't know if you're familiar with the Johnson & Johnson heir. He made those films that were exposing this inner world. You cannot find those films now. They are essentially he's nowhere to be seen. They reprimanded him or drew him back or whatever they do. So I just think how so much of Paris's atmosphere and things that contributed to her development can be explained by leftist feminist theory. And I just think...
And the solution...
I just want to give her this framework. I just want to give it to her because...
Do you think that she could be Comrade Paris?
I mean, I think that's how we get some people is it would make her happy to have an answer for it to make sense in a satisfying way. I think if she could look at, of course she'd send her herself as they do. But I do think because of the emotional dimension, and how she is so unhappy and so disconnected from somebody who's always had their needs met, plus can't be made happy by that, whereas me, I'm shit, you give me fucking some food and other things and I'm very pleased, I'm very happy. Just having my needs met, I'm ooh, this is great. But she can't experience that, you know? And instead she's like otherized this intangible unhappiness into this ambitious, like amorphous pursuit of making $1 billion when she doesn't seem like the most useless human being and her efforts could actually be used for something productive. Instead, her life is about this hollow pursuit.
See, but this is where the liberal communist would kick in and say that the best way to help others is to just redistribute wealth, you know, by giving to charity.
But she already does that. And
that's
it
what I'm
doesn't make her
saying, like,
happy.
that they would just say you need to do more of that.
Well, yeah, because
Whereas
I think she needs to feel the excitement of doing something disruptive but helpful with her resources. I think a lot of wealthy people.
We take the premise of concentration camps for rich people and say do more of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Or, yeah, 100%. That is what we need to do.
Well, anyway, folks, highly recommend this Paris documentary. It's very watchable, but there's also
I'll probably
interesting.
watch it at some point.
I don't think she comes out looking good.
I think you feel.
I have mixed feelings.
I don't think it's. I think she doesn't come off how she would like to, but to me, it made me feel very, like I said, affectionate towards her.
It was interesting because it seemed like an episode of The Simple Life, and at the same time, there was a disavowal of The Simple Life.
There was also an interesting discussion of, and I've always thought it was gross, the sex tape.
Yeah.
So they talk about, you know, she's a teenager in that tape, and like,
yeah.
And, you know, just how everyone was cruel to her and et cetera. It was interesting because I've always thought it was very gross. She kind of blames doing the having the relationship with the guy that the sex tape happened with, whatever, Rick Solomon, fucking whatever his name is. He's a dipshit and a predator and gross. She ties it to this experience at the school, but I wish she had a broader view. She has this sort of rich white woman's idea of feminism. Like, she knows it's harder for her to get taken seriously as a DJ. And,
one of the more esteemed professions.
And like, blah, blah, blah. But I'm like, what she experienced with that sex tape and et cetera and so forth was just a seething misogyny, you know? And
I mean, I will just say it's many a male heir of a billion-dollar family has also tried to be a DJ, and they also are generally not taken seriously.
Yeah.
Well, it's really just trying to be a DJ.
Mm-hmm. She really loves DJing. So, like, I say we just let her have it. That was another conclusion I came to. So guys, just let her have some DJ spots.
What did you think of the scene where she breaks off with her boyfriend?
Oh my God. What a fucking gross shithead he was. Marlo, essentially, she's playing a big festival in fucking Germany or Belgium. And, she's dating this guy, and she brings him along, and he's being all like, oh, you don't pay attention to me.
In a German accent.
And, like, just being a fucking...
Well, he was belligerent and drunk.
He was also... Yes. But,
So cool.
Yeah, so very cool. But I was just like... Cool. I had to, like, remind myself multiple times that a Miss Paris Hilton is, in fact, my elder. She is older than me. I felt bad for her that she was dating this guy. You know, she finally has it, and she kicks him out. She gets his bracelets cut off,
Which is the worst thing that you
the
can
worst thing
possibly do
you
to a
could
person.
that's she describes it as the worst thing you could possibly do to a person. So all of these moments made me go, oh, Paris. Paris, I will save you from the guillotines when the time comes and put you in my private college.
Re-education
My
camp
private re-education camp.
That won't trigger you.
Full of all my favorite celebs. And I will get my own collection of rich people that I personally get to save.
Speaking of which, Kim had one of the best quotes in the whole thing, where she said the best advice that Paris ever gave to her was just having her watch her do her thing, or something along those lines.
That's the rules. That's awesome.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
It's like that's not advice, for one. I think you're using advice wrong.
It's funny because Kim is exceedingly diplomatic, especially about Paris specifically. And I don't know if you guys are privy to this kind of stuff, but Paris sort of famously described Kim Kardashian as
a fucking peasant.
Looking like, well, yes, as
I'm not even sure that Armenians are really white.
Yeah, definitely. She said also that her ass looked like cottage cheese in a Glad trash bag.
That shit's awesome. That's hilarious.
I did pick up shade.
So that's and now Paris is very, and you can, I think I know what moment you're going to talk about, because when they're talking about the sex tape, Paris is sort of disparagingly says, like, it became like I didn't want that to happen, but it became this thing that, like, you know, people used to get famous or like blah, 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 whatever.
Without me, there would be no Kim Kardashian. Yeah,
well, and Kim says as much in
fair enough.
the film.
No, because that is literally true.
I think it's unfortunate that Kim was very much also a victim of essentially revenge porn. Anyone who is familiar with the program Love and Hip Hop has seen that a Mr. Ray J is a vindictive, fucking unstable person. Is very not great to the women folk, both on and off camera. And so it's just sad because I could see Paris still does this. She's better than Kim because she didn't capitalize on the sex tape.
I mean, she clearly did, but yeah.
Well, I mean, but Paris, Kim very much directly made a choice. Right. Kim said, there's no way I can control this from being out there, so you're going to fucking pay me part of this money that you're making, which is the smart decision to do. If it's zero
the Kardashians at the end of the day are not just this inherited self-valorizing capital. They were at a certain point, you know, Papa Kardashian was a fucking lawyer and they had to actually use some level of skill to get to where they are. And they think accordingly.
Yes. Yeah. So it's...
And plus the Armenians have the basic Jew thing of oh shit, someone might genocide us at any time, so we gotta be ready. Yes, I guess. Shana Tova. Yeah, absolutely. Lashana Tova, baby. This is, thinking about Rosh Hashanah, famous news like Allen Ginsberg.
The only Ginsberg we're going to talk about.
I guess.